Welcome, everyone. You guys are welcome to, oh, Pam's already in here. I was going to say, you guys are welcome to turn your camera on if you would like, but no pressure there. Let me just give it an additional second before I jump in.
Oh, good. That way we can see if I'm putting anyone to sleep if you have cameras on.
I don't think that will be an issue. Well, I will go ahead and just kind of jump in, and then folks can join a little bit later if they'd like to. But just wanted to say good morning, welcome everyone in here. Just wanted to share a few things before we jump in. I know a good number of folks on here are already familiar with us, but just wanted to let you guys know, first and foremost, we are recording the workshop today. So just be aware, if you're sharing anything confidential, just refrain if you don't want to include it in the recording. And I'll go ahead and introduce myself briefly. I know many of you on here may already know me, but just in case, my name is Kate Turley. I work with Downtown Raleigh Alliance as the Small Business Program Manager. We are a downtown organization. As many of you are familiar, we provide a number of services for downtown businesses, including these workshops. Luckily, due to the nature with it being virtual, we were able to open it up to some other folks that may be interested in attending. Also wanted to present our folks here, wonderful presenters that are joining today. Ela Burbank, Executive Director with the North Carolina Employee Ownership Center, as well as Mark Weldon, Small Business Development Manager with the City of Raleigh Small Business Economic Development Team. So just wanted to jump right in. If you'd like to start sharing. And then in terms of questions, if you guys wanted to throw them in the chat, we can probably run through them during the presentation or, after we wrap up. So Eli, I will let you jump right in.
Okay, we're actually going to, welcome everybody. So we're talking about a little bit about succession planning and how employee ownership can fit into that. But I do want to, we're going to have Mark give it a start first. So go ahead, Mark.
Thanks, Ila. Hi, everyone. I know a bunch of you, so we thought it'd be easy for me to just start things off and give you, first of all, a little bit of a just quick overview of what all we do for the folks that don't know, and then I'm going to get out of the way and let Ila do all of the really interesting stuff for today. But it's good to see you all. As Kate said, I am Mark Weldon. I lead the small business development team here. We work mainly with storefronts, aspiring entrepreneurs, folks making cupcakes at their kitchen table, and other small businesses. And we started working with Ela and the team on employee ownership, gosh, about a year and a half ago now, and we've really come a long way since then. So we're excited to bring this to you today. So let's jump right into it. Let me get my part done and over with so we can make space for Ela. Next, please. The small business development mission. Sorry about the graphics. I guess some of the things didn't transport over, but now they're really exciting. So they got exclamation points. We do small business support, micro enterprise, home-based entrepreneurship, and some workforce development. And the idea is that small businesses and communities are important for each other. Next, please. I'm not going to read all of this to you, but just know that our team has developed over the last few years a pretty rich portfolio of programs, partnerships, resources, and engagement. Today, we're hitting a whole bunch of these. We're going to be talking about employee ownership. We're working with our partners at Downtown Raleigh Alliance. Thank you, Kate, and the Downtown Raleigh Alliance team for hosting this session. There's financial aspects to this. We've got other partners in the background that Ela can talk a little bit more about, helping us with this journey. We are going to be putting this onto our homepage as well, so people can find information about it. So we all point, to each other, all of our organizations, and this is definitely a workshop. Next, please. That eye chart you're seeing is our homepage. So if you want to have any resources designed for small businesses, we do support over 20,000 small businesses. So we've designed our resources to be online and available 24/7 to match the busy and erratic and unpredictable schedules of small business owners. Check it out. I'll have a QR code in a few slides. Next, please. Wanted to just highlight a couple things. If you're not aware of them, these are our most popular resources. Our partner event calendar, we had over 400 listings in the fiscal year that just wrapped up of training events, workshops like the one you're in today, networking events, vendor events where small business can sell stuff and other things. If you're not familiar with this calendar, check it out. What we do is we consolidate the event calendar of Downtown Raleigh Alliance and 24 other organizations and bring it into one place so you don't have to go hunting around for it. QR codes at the bottom, and this will be recorded. You can look at that later. Next, please. One of the tools that we offer, the city makes an investment in technology that we provide on our page for free for small businesses. You don't have to have any identifying information. There's no paywall. You don't have to pay for anything. You don't have to log into anything. You don't have to remember an account password. Just go to the site. You can type in what sector you're in, and it'll come up with all kinds of really cool data about what a typical business like yours, revenue-wise, is making over the course of a year, what the opening hours are for typical businesses in your industry, and a whole bunch more. Check it out. It's on our website. Next, please. In the same toolkit, there is a wealth of information about best practices for small businesses. And many of these boxes that are on the screen, you can go to video, short video clips that will walk you through some of the additional information. Next, please. Self-service resources. We do have the business resource guide. If you see us at expos and events, it's a really cool booklet that we like to hand out, but it's also on our website. And then if you're just starting out, we do have startup roadmaps. This is really more about business exits and succession planning. So we're not going to talk much about startups today. Next, please. And I think this might be close to my last slide. So there is another QR code that'll take you right to our homepage. For all of this information and more. If you ever have any questions, please let me know. Contact me or my team, and we'll do our best to support you and the small businesses. I really went through that fast, but it's so we can get over to Ila. Next, please. Ownership, and I think there's one more slide after this, maybe. Okay, so the ownership. Yeah, we can. You're about to hear about all this stuff. Keep going. And so now, finally, I would like to welcome Hila Burbank to take over and share with you all a whole bunch of new information that you have not heard before, probably about succession planning and employee ownership. And we are thrilled to have Hila here today. Hila, all yours, and thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Mark. I learned a couple new things too from you. That was great. All right. So who we are and why we're here. So I'm from the North Carolina Employee Ownership Center. So NCEOC, because that's a mouthful. I'm just going to say NCEOC. We're a nonprofit organization. We're fully funded by donors and foundations and such because of the important information of keeping small businesses such as yourself local. So that's what we do. That's our mission, is keeping these businesses local through employee ownership. We'll guide you through all sorts of different options. Obviously, our preference is employee ownership. And hopefully by the end of this, you'll also see why we're preferential to the employee ownership. So a little bit about myself. I started out, I'm a recovering banker. I used to be a small business lender in my early career. Then I started with a sheet metal prototype manufacturing company. It was a brand new startup company. I was employee number 3. Grew with them for 21 years as we bought another sister company, we expanded, became CFO and president of those companies. So I know what it's like to be a small business, wear the many hats. You know, can you do HR? No, but I guess I'll have to learn, won't I? Oh, hey, we need our OSHA manual written. Can you do that? I guess, you know, I'm very familiar with that feeling. But anyway, 21 years with them, and at some point, the the founder of that company sold a portion of that company to the employees through an ESOP plan, which we'll talk about. So I've seen the benefits of employee ownership. That's why I'm one of the reasons that I'm here, because I want other people to have that experience also. So how we do this is education. Webinars such as this. We talk to business owners and advisors, because still many advisors, CPAs, attorneys, all those people still don't know about employee ownership. They may know about other options, but not necessarily employee ownership. Much of what we do is education. But if we do find there's a business owner who's interested now in learning more, talking about their succession planning, employee ownership, we'll do one-on-one advising. So you'll likely meet with me. We'll go over what are your short-term goals, what are your long-term goals, kind of figure things out. And if you get to the point where we say, yep, I'm ready to move forward, hold your hand through the whole process, put you in touch with the people to actually make that transaction happen. So that's what we do. So succession planning, why plan? It's better to plan now and not 3 months and before you say, okay, I'm done. By the end of the summer, I'm out of here. The longer road that you have in your planning, the more options that you have. Last minute decisions lead to fewer options. Why? You're going to exit the business one way or another. That sounds a little, I don't know, not demonic, but anyway, yes, you will exit one way or other. Whether that's voluntary, you're retiring, some way you're going to be exiting the business. If you plan ahead, you can have plenty of time to let your vendors, your customers know about the changes coming on. Your bankers and your family and employees can be all on board with this change and support this change. So some things you might think about in succession planning is, maybe that loss of purpose. I know that's a concern for many business owners who've put their blood, sweat, and tears. So if I retire, all of a sudden, what am I going to do with myself? Retirement can be a scary thing. Loss of control. I won't be the one making these decisions. And that's also a scary thing to think about. How's this business going to continue after I exit out of here? You might wonder, what's the value of my business? What am I going to get for this business? Can I live in my retirement for what I'm going to receive for this business? And you might also be thinking, this is a really complex process. So, how am I going to navigate through this whole process? So a couple things to think about here is, what do I want for the business? Kind of try to look into that crystal ball and see in the future and see what would I like to see this business look like 5, 10, 15 years from now? What do I need from the business? Including, do I want to stay in the business full-time, part-time? Do I want to exit? Who do I want to be making the decisions going forward? So who should own the business? I'm going to talk about these together. Who should own the business and who should run the business? Those are two things. Who's going to be the name on the stock certificate? Who's owning the business? And then who's the leadership of your business? Who's going to be making the day-to-day decisions? Those are two separate things. And oftentimes when you make that decision to exit, if you're exiting and you're selling it to an outside party, guess who makes that decision of who runs the business? They're going to tell you whether you have to stay, whether you get those, shackles you have to stay for 2 years or whatever, or they may say, you're out of here. You don't make that decision. They may bring in their own people, or they make own decisions on who's running the business going forward. I'm going to interject in here and say that I actually did have to work for a private equity firm. They bought out a company, and for 2 years I worked under a private equity firm, and they said we were going to be able to keep our advisors, everything's the same. You're going to make your local decisions. And it took them only 3 months to say, oh, we're going to bring accounting in-house. We're going to bring HR in-house. Oh, your insurance broker you trust so much now, we're going to consolidate insurance. So another reason I like employee ownership. So I've had that experience of selling to the outside. So let's talk about getting there. What do you have to do from that moment where you're saying, okay, let me think to the future. What do I have to do to get there to be able to exit my business? You have to do an assessment. It's a really important part of it is assessing your company. What's your state of operation? Is everything about your business in your brain? Or do other people know how to make things happen? Could you, and when I talk to people one-on-one, one of the first questions I ask is, could you go on a 2 to 3 week vacation and not get a phone call from your employees every hour? If not, you're not ready to exit the business and still have your business continue on as you would like to, right? So who's going to be that next level of management and leadership who can take over? Company finances. Are you the only one who knows what's going on with the company finances? You need to find a way to make sure that those books are cleaned up and someone else understands and can manage those finances. Understanding the state of the economy and the market. Is this the right time? How's that going to impact any sale that I have and what your industry is like? Because anyone who, if you were to even sell to the outside, these are all questions they're going to ask. It's called due diligence. I've been through due diligence, not so much fun. But these are the things due diligence is going to look at. So small businesses, there are studies out there that only 30% of small business owners have a succession plan out there. So let's start early. It's not always about retirement. It could be disability or it could be disengagement also, your exit strategy. It could be that you're saying, I've had enough. I've been at it for a long time. I just can't take it anymore. That could be your exit also. So one of the things we're talking about a lot lately is the silver tsunami. It's called. There are 6 out of 10 small business owners in the United States are of retirement age or close to retirement age. So if you're looking across the United States, we're looking at 2.3 million business owners that are going to be retiring in the next 5 some years. That's a lot. That's 24, almost 25 million employees who are, I'm going to say, at risk, because there's always that chance that a business owner is not planning far enough in advance and they just said, I'm done. They can't find an owner. They think they have no other options and they close. Unfortunately, that happens too often. So if we look at North Carolina specifically, just in North Carolina, there's 82,000 business owners who are of retirement age, and we'll be looking to figure out who's owning my business next. So it kind of hinted at a couple of the options that we have, what you have as a business owner, family members. More and more kids of business owners do not want to take over the parents' business. They want to strike out on their own, make their own way. So the old model of just handing down the business to your kids still happens, but not as frequently as it used to. You could always try to sell to your management team, but not everyone's able to do that. If you're just going out to your management team, they may have to raise funds. They may not have the capacity to buy that out from you. And then there's the outside purchaser, whether that's a private equity firm or you're selling to a competitor. There's that loss of control that I talked about when you're doing this. And then you may say, well, I'll just go to a broker. On average, because I was really surprised when I first saw this statistic. If you sell with a broker or you list with a broker, only 20% of businesses that list with a broker actually end up selling. It's a pretty dismal number. Now, there are some brokers who are going to do better than that. And I've had brokers say, but no, I sell 70%. So go to them. But on average, it's only 20%, right? We don't want business owners to look at their options and say, this isn't working. Try the broker. It didn't sell. I'm closing down the business, and not think that, hey, there's another option here, employee ownership. So I'm going to talk a little bit about employee ownership. But first, I just talked about the silver tsunami in retirement. There's other reasons that you can bring in employee ownership. So first of all, it gives you that flexibility. I talked about the ownership succession and leadership succession. In employee ownership, you're making that decision of when you leave, right? You could sell your business. I'm going to say air quotes sell because I'll talk about that in a moment. You could sell your business to your employees now and decide to stay in. So we're breaking that leadership and ownership succession issues. So you have that flexibility on the timing. You could also do a partial sale, like in the company where I was. He sold about 43% of the business. So you could do it over time with a gradual transition and do a partial sale. You and I and other people, as we get older and older and older, we look at our portfolio. We like to diversify our assets and make sure that we're getting a little bit more conservative as we get to closer to retirement age. So employee ownership also gives that option that you could convert or sell over your business to employees and take the funds from there and diversify your assets as you get closer to your retirement age. Because business owners, often small business owners, all of their eggs are in one basket. Another way is to start a new business. So if you're a serial entrepreneur, you can use employee ownership. Again, the business owner that I was in that manufacturing company sold a portion of the business to the employees and was able to reinvest that capital to another business, which is highly successful right now. So many reasons other than exiting to consider employee ownership. So why consider employee ownership? So for the owner, it gives you that strategy to exit the business, maybe stay a little bit longer, but the long-term goal of exiting, it provides fair market value. So I'm going to do a couple myth busters here. One of them is, why would you sell to your employees? You're giving something up. That's not true. In any sort of transaction, employee ownership, you go out and do a fair market value assessment, and the transaction is done at fair market value. You get the same as what you would have had out on the open market. Employee ownership preserves your legacy, and we'll talk about it. Some of them gives you actually some tax benefits that you would not be able to receive in other methods of exit. For the employees, we're talking about here, employee ownership is for everybody, whether you're stocking shelves or whether you're a manager. Everybody participates. It's broad-based. So it helps with your employees in their own personal wealth building. Also, the studies show that employee-owned companies compared to their peers tend to have better wages and benefits and increased engagement. And I can attest to that. When we became that partially employed company, no longer have that feeling of the employees coming in to punch the clock and just do their job. Once they realize that the efforts that they have contribute to the company, contribute to better engagement with the customers, if they make these ideas and changes to the benefit of the company, those benefits are coming back to their own pocketbooks. And there's a sudden mindset shift as that ownership mentality kicks in rather than that employee mentality. And for the community, we all want you, small businesses, to stay open, be here long term. It's the benefits, the jobs are staying locally rooted in the community. So statistics, again, 8 to 10% better performance for employee-owned companies. And it's oftentimes greater use for recruiting and retention. So especially in construction nowadays, in North Carolina specifically, there's been a lot of conversions over to employee ownership because, as you probably know, that in the construction workers, it's a really tough market to find employees in the construction trade, and they will just go to whoever's paying the most this week. They don't have much allegiance to construction, and so switching over to employee ownership, when you bring in a recruit, you can say, hey, look, if we continue at this rate and you become an employee owner, look what you'll have 5, 10, 15 years down the line if you stay with us, if you stick with us. And so they're using employee ownerships, the owners staying, many of them, the owners staying still involved, but they're doing this as a method for recruiting and retention of employees. If you like statistics, median wages on average 33% higher. Tenure is 53% higher or longer. Okay, so what kind of business is a good fit for employee ownership? So privately owned business, you still want to have good cash flow. We're not going to be selling a lemon to your employees. nor would you be able to sell a lemon, right, to anyone at this point. So if you're looking at an exit strategy, you want to make sure you have decent cash flow. We'll be talking about 3 different models in a moment. So depending on the size and the goals of the company, we can help you figure out what model works the best. And then you want to have that leadership succession in place. We talked about that at the beginning, the clean books. Operations are out in the open, management succession in place. We're not talking about this odd thing. What is employee ownership? This is new thing. It's been around for a long, long time. So if you go to our website, you'll see this map. It's actually an interactive map, and it's a listing of employee-owned companies in North Carolina. If you were to click on any one of those pins, you would see the name of that company when you click on there. Here's a couple of names you might recognize that are North Carolina employee-owned companies. But there's a lot more, so you can navigate through our site. So the 3 types of employee ownership that we're going to talk about. First one is the one that is most well known. It's an ESOP. It's an employee stock ownership plan. That's over 6,600 ESOPs that are in the US currently. And we'll talk about that in a moment, but it tends to be for slightly larger companies. Then you have worker cooperatives. And this is myth busting number 2. If you become a worker cooperative, doesn't mean you have to start wearing Birkenstocks and talking about socialism. That's what people think about worker cooperatives. It looks, smells, and feels actually like a regular business. There are some businesses, worker cooperatives, where they are typically, we'll do that, Birkenstocks, but worker cooperatives really are a business that day to day looks the same. And then here we have the employee ownership trusts. So that's a new one. It's been in the UK for a very, very long time, but it's relatively new in the United States. There's only about 60. We have 3 here in North Carolina, but we have a lot of interest in it because it really hits a lot of issues with a smaller business. All right, so let's talk about that ESOP. I don't know the names here, so I don't know what businesses you're in, but I'm just going to make this guess that probably an ESOP is not going to be the right option for you. So this is the one that's most well known. If you're to go to talk to your advisors or your CPA, this is one they might know about. So this is generally for businesses that have 40 or more employees, because this is a retirement plan. So how this function is, you, the founder, decide to sell a portion to your employees. You create a trust. The trust buys the shares from you at market rates. You do a valuation. Here's what the shares are worth. The trust buys those shares from you through bank loans, and oftentimes with you giving back a note where you'll get paid back over time. So now the trustee is that name on your shares of the company. But what happens is that these shares are allocated. So the employees' names don't go on the stock certificates, but they're allocated shares every single year. And it looks like a 401k plan with your stock certificates. So every year, employees get a few shares. You do a valuation, and every year, those number of shares increase to the point where once they retire or leave the company buys back those shares from that departing owner, and they can roll those funds into a IRA. So during the tenure of this employee, it's like a 401k. Money's going in there. They don't pay taxes on it. When they leave, it's rolled over into retirement funds. So why is it now for 40 or more employees? Well, think about a 401k. If any of you offer 401k to your employees, you know there's a lot of regulations around retirement plans. The government's very careful about making sure that there's nothing happening to the employee's future and in their retirement plans. And so you can't have a trustee who is, your Uncle Bob be your trustee, because they take on that liability of the Department of Labor oversight, the retirement system, ERISA oversight. You have to do a valuation of your company every single year. You have to determine what that price per share is. So it's a considerable cost. And so Many times we're talking about $250,000 of just to convert and then ongoing costs beyond that. So why would someone choose the ESOP? Because there's some great tax benefits. If you're an S corporation ESOP, 100% ESOP, you pay no corporate taxes, income taxes. Shocking, right? So great benefits, but most people don't have that $250,000 to make this happen, plus the ongoing cash flow, really for bigger companies. Talked about some of this already, highly regulated in there. The other option is for taxes, you can defer your capital gains. So if you sell your business and you're stand to have to pay a lot of capital gains taxes on there, the ESOP, what you can do is much like an IRA rollover, right? As long as you don't take that cash and you're rolling it into another plan, you don't have to pay taxes on it. For a C corporation ESOP, same kind of thing. You could sell the business, and as long as you're rolling those into stock and the regular stock market is fine, you can defer those capital gains taxes. So great benefits. Okay, you don't have that many employees. You can't take on that burden. What are my other options? So we have these two other options for you. One of them is the employee ownership trust. Starts out the same. You create a trust. The trust buys the shares from you, and the trustee now is the name on the stock certificates. But rather than being a retirement plan, it is now a profit sharing plan. So the founder, when you leave, you set up the terms of the trust. You say, okay, trustee, after I exit, here's what I want you to do. I want you to, at the end of the year, with the net profits, hold back what you need for taxes, because you still have to pay taxes in EOT. There's no tax advantages here. I want you to hold back a certain amount every year for reinvesting into the business, because I know we're going to have to buy new equipment or buy new whatever. So hold back some money for that. Then I want you to pay profit sharing to the employees. I'm just going to throw out a number. Let's say 20% of our profits every year go to employees, whether that's paid quarterly, semi-annually, or annually. The nice thing about this too is it's very flexible. You are making those decisions. You're setting up the trust and making those decisions. You could even say, hey, trustee, I want you to 5% give to Habitat for Humanity because I believe in that cause. So a lot of great flexibility for the employee ownership trust. It's not a retirement plan. So think about this again. So I'm going to kind of restate it. You now have the ownership of the company set. That trustee is the owner of that company. Doesn't matter who's running the company, what leadership you have in place. It could be forever. And in fact, you can tell this trustee you may never sell the company, or you can tell this trustee you may only sell this company if the following conditions are met. 90% or 80% of our employees vote yes, or the offer is big enough that everyone gets at least 3 times their salary as a payout of this, whatever the case may be. So that separate between the ownership and the leadership succession. You could have forever ownership of this company and not worry about where that ownership is going to bounce for in perpetuity if you want to. Lower administrative costs. So you could get as long as your Uncle Bob is maybe a savvy business person or maybe a CPA, you could get your Uncle Bob to be the trustee, because they're not having to have Department of Labor oversight. They're only just saying what you asked, hey, trustee, do this with the profits, make these decisions on sales. They're the ones helping to make those decisions. All right, that worker cooperative. So worker cooperative, again, looks, smells, and feels like a business. It's a little bit different. For the first 2, you could technically make that transition over to employee ownership, not tell any of your employees, get a town hall together and say, hey, employees, guess what? You're now employee owners. And in fact, for ESOPs, that's how it usually happens, because there's a lot of details. There's a lot of, you don't want to get your employees all excited and then something happens or things are delayed longer than you expected. So the first 2, that's certainly an option. Worker cooperative, you can't do that. So in a worker cooperative, you need buy-in from your employees to make this happen. So what happens here is that you create a new business entity, usually an LLC, and your employees who are saying, "Yep, I want to become an employee owner. This sounds exciting. I'm all in. I'm all in here." They help make the decisions on this new business entity. They're going to make the decisions on the governance issues. So you're going to need a board of directors, by the way, for all three of them. But who's this board of directors going to look like? How many? Are we going to have 3, 4, 5 members of the board of directors? How many are internal? How many are external? They make decisions about how long you have to work there before you can become a member, how the voting decisions are made. What are we going to be able to make decisions on together as a group? What are we allowed to vote on or not? They're also going to decide what I'm called the par value. So similar to the other two functions, or the other two models, sorry, when you create this new company and they buy those shares from you at market rates, that's all done through loans. The profits of the business are going to repay those loans. So that's all done with employees not having myth number 3, that the employees have to pay out of pocket to buy this company from you. It's done through loans. So that initial transaction is all done through different types of loans, bank loans, seller loans. Maybe you can get some other in-between people to help out with other kinds of loans. We can help with that. However, with a worker cooperative, they do, in this case, literally buy in out of pocket. Now, those employees are going to decide what that looks like. So to buy a share, and you can only buy one share, you're going to say it's going to cost the employees, let's just say a home cleaning business. That bar might be lower. You might say $300 to become an owner of this company. Now that can be deducted from future paychecks. But let's just say you are an architectural firm. That bar might be higher, and it might be $12,000 to become an owner of that architectural firm. So it all depends on the industry, and all depends on these employees who are setting up the governance documents. So you set all of this up, the decisions are made, the new LLC buys the shares from the departing founder. Then this company has these shares, and then employees are allowed to buy one share, and one share only. It doesn't matter if you are supervisor or stocking the shelves again, you buy one share. And that one share allows you to have one vote as you're making decisions about your board of directors. Are we going to buy a new location? Big picture things. Otherwise, everything looks the same. You still have maybe a general manager or president of the company who hires the people beneath them, who hires the people beneath them. You still have purchasing. You still have the same roles that you would normally have. But these shares allows everyone to have a vote in the big picture questions. The other thing that the share allows you to have is sharing the profits equally. Doesn't matter where you are on that organizational chart at the end of the line, at the net profit at the end of the year, those profits are shared equally. Now that doesn't mean everyone gets paid the same. You still get supervisors probably making more than people on the floor, shall we say. You can have benefits in there for, let's say, for salespeople, that if they sell X number of accounts, then you get a little bonus. So all of those things still happen. But after all of those normal things are paid, what's left over is shared equally. So in this way, there's more democratic governance because you have more input with your vote on the share. This also has some tax advantages if we're selling over to worker cooperative. That rollover that I talked about, that's also for the ESOP, that's also available for the worker cooperative. But it can also be for as few as 3 employees. So we talked about 40 or more for the ESOP. Worker cooperative can be for as few as 3. I didn't mention for that EOT, some people say 10, but I've seen it done with 6. So conversion costs, I'm going to call them, to make this whole thing happen with your attorneys and such. For EOTs, I've seen it. I've heard it's around $60,000 to make that whole thing happen, but it could be certainly less for the smaller businesses. Now you're paying for that up front. Whether you're going to a broker somewhere else, someone's going to be deducting the cost of those sale costs from your ultimate price anyway. And it's actually cheaper to do that, and go over to employee ownership than it is to, for example, go to a broker, because they'll charge you a percentage of the total sale price. So fewer hurdles than the ESOP. However, it is going to take longer. The average time to convert to a cooperative is around 18 months. And that's because you need to inform the employees, let them get together, make those decisions, set up those governance documents. Again, could be a little bit less, could be a little bit more. You also want to make sure that those employees, these new employee owners, understand financials, because they're going to be getting a profit sharing, and you want them to understand where this all coming from. So more education involved with a worker cooperative. Kind of mentioned this before, that management and ownership succession can be separated. You make those decisions of whether you're staying in the business or you're exiting after that. There's been many places, many times where you convert over to employee ownership, you, the founder, has that funds. You know that no matter what happens, the ownership is now in place, but you can still stay in the business to continue to educate those employees. I'm just thinking of a business owner that we're dealing with who has no heirs, family history of heart problems, small business owner. And he says, I don't want, God forbid, something to happen to me right now, but it could happen based on my family history. I don't want that to happen, and I don't know what's going to happen to my company. So very interested in converting over to an EOT, because he knows no matter what happens to him, whether that's in the near future or far away, he knows that his business ownership will continue on. You can also do a partial sale. So as I mentioned, with our company, started out at 43%, and then you can do several different, like in 5 years from now, another section, and then another portion, another 5 years after that. Okay, so small business owner, now what? Let's think about this. Where do you see yourself? These are some of the questions I would ask as we're getting together. Where do you see yourself in 5 to 10 years? Do you see yourself continuing to be actively engaged in the business? Do you see yourself at a beach house? Where do you see your business in 5 to 10 years? Do you want to keep it the same? Do you want to expand in the growth? How important is that legacy to you? And I'm going to say that employee ownership is one of the reasons that people choose is that legacy. The name on the business will stay. Like if you were to sell outside, you have no control over any of that. So Alpha Tech, who's in Fletcher, just recently converted over to Employee Ownership Trust. And it really sticks in my mind what he said. He said, I've known some of these employees since I was 10 years old. And so once I exit this business, I'm staying in the community. And as I'm out and about in the community, I want to make sure that my employees are taken care of and that my community are taken care of. And that's why he chose an employee ownership trust, because it's really important to him that that business that he built, worked so hard, is going to continue on. And the culture that he built is going to continue on as he set up that culture. So what are we going to do, as you evaluate your business? This is that due diligence that I talked about. Do you have a strong profits? Do you have a solid customer base? How's your industry right now? Those cleaning up the books, are your personal expenses taken out? Are you paying for your own personal car out of the business? It's time to start doing that on your own, because when you do evaluation of your company, you want to make sure that you have none of your personal expenses in here. That's going to help you maximize the value of your company. Is everything, we're going to take a look at for the valuation, is everything in good shape? Is your equipment in good shape? What are your supplier relationships? Do you have only one customer, or do you have a wide base of customers? These are very important questions to think about as you're nearing the exiting of your business. These are all questions that are going to be asked no matter what happens. So we can help with that. NCEOC, as I mentioned, I'm very happy to talk to you. We'll talk about your short-term goals, long-term goals. Now, if you're going to tell me that I want to pull every little drop of juice out of that orange so I can go buy my beach house, and you have someone who's willing to come in and pay more than what your company is worth, which is what happened when we were bought out by a private equity firm. A PE firm came in and offered a ridiculous price per share. Founder said, I can't pass that up, I guess. And if that's what you want to get as much money out of the business as you can so you can go to the beach, then that's not going to work. Employee ownership is not for you if that's what your goals are. If your goal, though, is that legacy, you want to get market value, you want to take care of your business, your employee, continue on that hard work that you put into that business, we can help you with that employee ownership. We can put you in touch with other businesses. I've mentioned a couple already, but if you're deciding on employee ownership, but you want to talk to someone and say, what's it really like, boots on the ground? Can I go talk to someone? We'll make those connections for you. And then decide on your timeline. Several of the business owners that I've spoken to, first thing is, I'm not ready yet, but I'm thinking 2-3 years down the line that I might be ready to exit. That's fine. Come talk to us right now, because we can help you figure out, are you ready? I'll ask those questions. Could you go on vacation? Are your books ready? We'll dive deep into those a little bit. And if you're not, we have resources out there, whether we're putting you in touch with the SBTDC, whether you're putting in touch with SCORE, who are all free resources, or, we can put you in touch with an exit planner if you're willing to pay a little bit for that help to get you there so that you're ready to exit. And that's fine. We're in it for the long haul, help with those options, put you on a long-term list, keep checking back with you so that when you are ready, all those things that are done, we talked about on that list for you to get ready for exit, then help you out with that actual transition. So we talked a little bit about that, assessing the readiness. If you're ready to convert, are you ready? If you are, then we do an evaluation. Bring an independent firm. What is your company worth? So we'll need to together, we can help make referrals for a valuation firm, get some tax advice, and then you need some funding, bankers involved. So talk a little bit about, we have a conference coming up. Mark, I think you briefly mentioned that'll be coming out in the newsletter before we started. So NCEOC, we are hosting this North Carolina Business Continuity and Employee Ownership Conference coming up on September 16th at the McKimmon Center. It's a full-day conference. We'll have topics there about open book management. So how do you communicate your business to your employees to get better engagement with your employees? Leadership succession, topics on leadership succession. How do I develop that next level of leadership within my business? We'll also have some other topics on to help with recruiting and retention. So in addition to the different employee ownership models, so there'll be different sessions on the different types, the EOT, worker cooperative, the ESOP, if you're interested. Lots of time for networking. So people will have name tags, and if there's we'll also have existing employee-owned companies there. So if you're interested in a model and you see someone who has that tag that says, I'm an EOT or I'm an ESOP, you can go grab them by the ear and say, hey, I want to talk to you. We'll also have a panel discussion that'll bring in existing employee-owned companies to talk about what it was like. Why did they make that decision to convert over? And what does it look and smell and feel like once you convert it over? So $25 registration fee, lunch is included. It's on the NC State campus, free parking. Love to see you there. So other sessions that we often have, if you go to our website, we have an events page. In addition to the conference, we celebrate in October those newly converted businesses that switched over to employee ownership. We celebrate them, and we continue to have webinars and other webinars. We have, if you happen to know any attorneys or CPAs, they can get a continuing education credit for stuff. So we continue on with our education. Join us, please. And then that's it. I'm going to leave some time for questions. So please reach out to me, whether you're thinking about in the near future, the far future, you just wanted to look at employee ownership as a method for recruiting, retention, diversification, whatever that is. Reach out, whatever stage you're in right now. So stop for questions. Thank you. If you just have people come off mute and ask away.
Hi
Go
there. I'm Pam.
Hi, Pam.
I own a retail business and we have fewer than 10 employees.
Okay.
I'm going to be honest, as interesting as this is, it feels slightly out of reach for my model. I've been considering profit sharing. I have one employee who's been there for all but one of my 14 years. I have two employees that have been there for 6 years. I'd like to give them some benefit and some incentive to continue on and contribute. The co-op sounds the closest, but I'm not positive. And this may just not be a reasonable model for my business size. Just wonder if what you would do with a little tiny enterprise like mine.
Great points. And as I kind of mentioned, when I talked about the ESOP, knowing that most of you are not going to be a fit for that. So when we get together with business owners, that's often the first thing. How big are you? What's the cash flow like? ESOP, big enough for ESOP, great. But if not, and that's going to be you, we have two options, the worker cooperative or the EOT. And the decision on that is going to come down to a lot of it is culture, right?
Yeah.
Do you have the employees who, you're going to go to, and don't caution you, I wouldn't go right now to the employees and say, hey, do you guys want to become owners and become a worker cooperative?
Of course.
Because if you don't have the answers, I'm happy to go to those conversations so that if there are questions, then I can give the right answers. Last thing you want is employees who are like, I don't understand it and say, nope, not for me.
Well, you kind of, I had a question about that, which is the owner also part of the co-op, or
they can be, but they don't have to be.
Okay, so I kind of put an X next to it when I heard two things. One was that they get to make the decisions, and the second was that they really have to understand the financials. This is retail, and that's not. I mean, the manager certainly fits in that category, but the others do not.
Sure.
And I honestly would more be looking for a model where the more work they put in, the more the financial payoff is for them, frankly. So that doesn't feel like, I mean, I can give bonuses and I do, but I have two who I think would probably stick around for a long, long time if they were partial owners. But if I showed them my financials, I'm not sure they'd understand it or ever would. So that feels like
So a couple things here, I guess. Let's go back to the worker cooperative in that the decision making, let's keep in mind that the decision making is for the big picture things. Are we going to sell the business? Are we going to open a new location? The day-to-day decision making is still as it is today, right?
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about that. If I would, no matter what way you go, if you have some financials, and I'm not talking about they need to have total insight into it, but what does this mean? What's a balance sheet? What's an income statement? What's the difference between those? What is cost of goods sold?
Right.
Because your employees could have an impact in their decision-making and the cost of goods sold. You're going to tell them about the other expenses. They probably don't have much control over that. But if you do that, and this is where open book management, we talked about at the conference, comes into play, you can say, here's what we are hoping to do this year in our budget. And every month or maybe even every week, you're doing check-in points and saying, hey, we're meeting our projections or we're not meeting our projections, or we spent more here when we didn't anticipate. That's what I'm talking about, is understanding financials.
That makes sense. There's a logic to that. Yeah.
And that leads to greater engagement, because when they see that we're behind, then they'll say, well, why? Think through, everyone. Why did this happen? That's where you get that ownership mindset.
Right. Good idea. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Hey, one of our best examples of employee-owned business in downtown Raleigh is Weaver Street Market, and obviously they are organized as a co-op. In their case, they actually have their kind of customers also have the ability to be a co-op member. So obviously a different scale in the retail space, but I imagine that they structure that with a the owners are essentially electing the board of directors, right? Who are a
Right.
smaller subset.
Yeah, Weaver Street is actually very unusual, even on a national basis, in that they're a hybrid. So oftentimes when you look at co-op grocery stores, it's owned by someone separately, but the consumers have that membership right to get the benefit to shop there with a discount. And yes, often they get a vote on the board of directors, right, as a consumer, but that's it. Weaver Street is a worker cooperative and a consumer cooperative as a hybrid. So you may not know that, but when you go into Weaver Street Market and you see an employee there, they actually own that business, unlike other groceries. So whoever's working at Weaver Street, oh, let's just say I didn't mention this before. Actually, you don't have to own a share in a cooperative. An employee has the option. If they know that, hey, I'm only going to work here for 6 months, I'm a college student and, I just want to come in and do my job and be done at the end of the day. You don't have to become an owner. But most people do elect at some point, longer term employees elect to become an owner. So in Weaver Street, there are many of them there who are owners and they get to participate in the governance. They get to participate in electing the board of directors. They get to participate in net profit sharing.
One more question in both of the more plausible models, the EOT and the co-op. What happens when the employee leaves? Is that just written into the agreement that their benefits stop? Is there a buyout? What does that look like?
Yeah. So for an EOT, the term that is sometimes used is naked in, naked out. You come in with nothing. You participate while you're working there. You get to participate in the profit sharing. But when you leave, you don't leave with anything other than what you've saved right there. But there's no future benefit to them. For the worker cooperative, that employee bought that share. So when they leave, the cooperative has to buy back the value of that share. Now, throughout a worker cooperative's life, you can elect to pay all the profits out, or you can elect to keep some of those profits within the business to grow that business going forward. So that's if you're keeping some of those monies in and you elect to do that, the members elect to do that, then they get paid out that higher value as in their capital accounts. Any other questions? All great questions. Yeah, so for your businesses, often it's going to be a deciding point between worker cooperative and that employee ownership trust. Culture is going to be some of that. Who do you have people who you think are going to be able to say, yeah, I'm all in. I'm all in. I want to buy a share, and make those decision making ahead of time. Or you have great people who can do their jobs, but you want to make sure that the ownership of the company is in place, potentially in perpetuity. Any other questions?
A couple of those questions were answered in the presentation, which is super helpful too. Any other questions, guys?
If anything comes up while you're thinking about it, you can talk to me 1, 5, 10 times. Every time it's free. Again, we're not for profit. We are funded by those grants and donations. So talk to me as many times as you want. Won't charge you.
Guys, I will, we'll wrap up, but I will send the recording over to everyone as well as the presentation slides and contact information so you guys can reach out. So awesome.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It was great to see everyone.
All right. Thanks, guys. All right. Have a good one.